Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Ultimate Doctor Who Marathon, the show where I take one episode a day of classic Doctor Who and give my thoughts on it. And today, on the 18th of December 2017, we are beginning the next Patrick Troughton story with Fury from the Deep. This is a story written by script editor and some part-time actor Victor Pemberton, and is a six-part story that is completely missing from the BBC archives, the final story to be completely missing from the BBC archives. And we open up with the Doctor and company just arriving on a beach and having some fun. Yeah, we just have the Doctor and company sort of playing on this beach. They're playing on the foam. They're having a good time, and everything seems to be okay until, of course, the Doctor whips out his sonic screwdriver out an oil pipe and finds something weird, some weird noises coming from the pipe. This is an episode that really sort of uses situations like that just to build a lot of tension. Much like the Web of Fear episode 1, we get introduced to quite a few of our main characters, being Mr. And we have this is another one of those base under sieges. We have the leader of this base, Ronson, and we have this base is basically doing an oil it's an oil rig. It is there basically to be to be our so we have Robson as in charge of everything, and we have basically this oil rig where you just sort of you hear things, and everything just sort of it opens up as sort of this very, very creepy starting story, with everything just sort of building to this basically the Doctor and company sort of just messing around on this base, and Victoria eventually getting captured. Not getting captured. She goes into this room where the base keeps some oxygen, and a supply of oxygen, and the oxygen supply there is seems someone's tampered with it. So Victoria ends up being locked in the room, and then air conditioning opens, and then a bunch of foam starts filling in, and that's our cliffhanger. It's a very creepy cliffhanger, as everything is just sort of basically being building up to this creepy sort of middle of the road. We're in this thing as there's very, very weird things that are going on. You have Victoria actually being quite clever in this one, as they and everyone, because the Doctor and company get locked up. Victoria's the one who picks the lock. She seems to have some lock picking skills, which is really, really good. And this is a really good episode for Victoria. But other than that, you have our supporting characters, which are doing things on the side. We have this Mr. Harris, who seems to have left a report at home, so his wife comes to the brace to check on him, goes home to get it, and gets sort of stung by this seaweed on the floor. It's everything's just sort of weird, as we're basically building towards the cliffhanger, and we don't really get an explanation as what's happening, but it's all sorts of weird, and it's an excellent episode, and that's sort of what it makes you want to come back and see what the story is doing, if not just to figure out what's going on, like what is it with this foam? Why is there a bunch of seaweed everywhere? What's going on in the pipes? Who's this guy? Why would a guy be tampering with the oxygen? It's all there just to build you towards a creepy ending. So I'm going to give The Fury from the Deep, Episode 1, a 10 out of 10, because we start the story strong and give us a great base to continue the story. Alright, it is the 19th of December 2017, and I just finished watching Fury from the Deep, Episode 2. This episode is interesting in that it has about a minute of surviving footage of Mr. Oak and Mr. Quill, two workers at the place they're taken over by our villain of the story, which seems to be foam and seaweed. They start sprouting growths on their hands. I don't think there's ever an explanation given of what the seaweed is, and they invade the bedroom of Maggie Harris, who was stung by seaweed in Episode 1, and has not been feeling well since. And as her husband has gone to see if the Briggs doctor has returned, or the Doctor can help her. Well, they come in as this little comedy duo as sort of being like, oh, we need to fix the gas, and basically do a kitchen inspection and stuff. And then they come into her bedroom and they knock her out with gas, and it is extremely creepy. It is one of those scenes that just unnerves you. It's probably what this story is most famous for. It's that and the seaweed monster, of course, but it's just a 56-minute scene, and it really is creepy, and the entire scene still exists. So you watch it in full, and it is one of those just unnerving scenes. Surprisingly enough, cut from the censors in Australia, which because it's sort of an important scene to the story episode as well. Like, you need to know this to know why Maggie Harris became unconscious. So I wonder if they edited down this. They took it out, made a copy and edited the scene down to just sort of to end where it does, so you could have your ending like that. That sort of makes sense. Would make sense because it's a creepy scene. Other than that, we have mainly this episode has the Doctor, Jamie, and Victoria more on the sidelines, trying to work stuff out. Like the Doctor, there are points where he tries to tell Robson, you should listen to this Van Lutyens guy who's there as an inspector to basically give advice about anything really, and he's saying you should probably stop with all of this, and you should probably just slow down and take it easy and just let everything calm down before you continue with your work and do some inspecting just before you continue with your gas, because you could cause an explosion, and a lot of the tension is mounting from this. Like there's a mysterious gas that filled the room. That's what was filing with the foam, like some sort of gas that nearly killed Victoria. And this gas was also in the Harris's house, and it's a mystery. This episode is setting up a good mystery, and the big cliffhanger is much more speculative than it is. There isn't anyone in danger, but the impeller shuts down. It starts back up again, but there still seems to be a blockage, and Van Lutyens says we need to go down. He still won't be able to go down, but then he uses something. Something is waiting for them in the darkness? It's a very effective way of ending the episode, just sort of giving you the feeling that there's this pulsating heartbeat. That's almost like there's something alive down there, which is really creepy, and it really works for this episode. The episode knows how to make you feel like something's almost behind you, and something's just creeping in the shadows, wanting to get you. It's very, very creepy. You also have this seaweed that can sting that the Doctor takes. He doesn't pick it up, but I'm pretty sure he takes it for tests. Because, again, the Doctor doesn't have as much to do in this episode, which isn't a bad thing. Patrick Troughton gives a great performance for what it's worth. He just doesn't feature very much in the episode. So you really just have these developments with Maggie Harris, and then at the base with Robson, we also get an explanation that there's a central control rig that no one can seem to raise on the scanners. Like, they're having trouble getting to them, and they don't seem to be responsive to any of their efforts to, get in contact and be like, hey, we exist, is everything alright? So this is an episode that very much knows how to play on those fears, just sort of like being alone, and you don't really get the feeling that something could be happening. Oak and Quill are creepy. It's just nice to have a little bit of footage, and I'm guessing the direction of the story would be really nice. The guy who directed it also directed The Highlanders, and the surviving footage from that looked really nice, and some of the shots did. This one is using a lot. It also sort of is building on just sort of the creepiness that we open with the Doctor and Company, the story with the Doctor and Company playing in foam, and have the foam end up being what the villain of the piece is. So I'm going to give Fury from the Deep episode 2 another 10 out of 10 because it's a great episode. It continues on to be strong. I'd almost say it's better than the last one because it gives us just this amazing cliffhanger just to sort of leave you almost wanting that little bit more, like you just want to go that one step further before, so you can peel back and see what's what secrets this place is holding. It is the 20th of December 2017, and I just finished watching Fury from the Deep, Episode 3. This episode opens up very oddly without a cliffhanger reprise, which is actually suited for the story of the episode, as the last cliffhanger was much more subjective, as this episode takes much more of a focus on the Doctor, Jamie, and Zoe as they perform a bunch of tests, and basically the foam starts to invade, and the foam and the seaweed seems to be from the distant past, hence the title, The Fury from the Deep, because it's coming from the deep past and into the present day, where it's causing all sorts of havoc. This sort of story is what this sort of episode is, very much a middle episode that it's a perfect middle episode. Don't get me wrong, but it just sort of knows that it wants to be in the middle of all of the action and keep things going at a good rate. You have some really good scenes of the Doctor doing all of these tests as Robson still refuses to slow things down, and this is really starting what's to build up and break into his face. You just sort of blow up in his face. You just have all this tension around the base building up as everything seems to be going towards a large conclusion. I don't have nearly as much to say about this one, just because it's really, really good. A lot of it, you just have to watch it for yourself, really, to get the full impact, so I'm going to try to keep going, but who knows how long this will actually go on for. But the tension just sort of mounts. You get this feeling that everything is going to be built towards some sort of a conclusion, that we have the Doctor doing these tests and on the seaweed that he picks up and brings to the TARDIS labs until it starts to break out. And it's a crazy scene. You just sort of have this foam and seaweed just start to spout out of nowhere. And we're in the TARDIS, so we think it's safe. And it only really goes back when Victoria starts to scream, which is sort of, I guess, the interesting thing, where it's going to be screaming that stops this seaweed creature from really causing trouble. That Victoria that people have to scream, or else they're not going to be able to. But the Doctor really hasn't gotten onto that yet. You probably wouldn't be able to get onto it as much if the episode existed, but mainly it's just the linking text from the loose canon reconstruction which gives that away, that plot point away very soon, pretty early on, considering we are only on episode 3, and that's going to be treated as a big twist. I don't blame the episode, of course, because it is missing, so we have to have that. We also have, just some, a lot of this episode is just very much interpersonal drama between Robson, Harris, and Van Lutyens. You have Mr. Oak and Mr. Quill messing with things and basically screwing up with Robson, making him I think they get him by the seaweed, but that isn't made the most clear out of everything. We know that he definitely has some sort of problem, but, everything just sort of seems to build to that conclusion that he is being controlled by the seaweed. You have just what is one of all this episode really is also dealing with the disappearance of Maggie Harris, as she disappears from the episode, and everyone just sort of questions where she is until we get to what is a really eerie cliffhanger of her. She just sort of walks into the sea, and we see her submerge under the wave. If the scene doesn't exist, I feel like it could have easily been cut from censors, but sadly, because it's a cliffhanger, they really couldn't cut it, so it's really sad, because I really wanted to see what this scene would have looked like, because it's just an eerie cliffhanger. You have the music just sort of being all very creepy, and you just hear the waves, and she just walks in, and it's genuinely a frightening cliffhanger. So I'm going to give Fury from the Deep, Episode 3, another 10 out of 10, because we are really getting towards the climax of this story, and we'll be back with Episode 4 tomorrow. Alright, it is the 21st of December 2017, and I just finished watching Fury from the Deep, Episode 4, and this is an episode where we get up the tension, and we actually have introduced another one of those characters late into the game, much like the Brigadier was introduced in Episode 3 of The Web of Fear. This time we have Megan Jones, who sent Harris down to work with Robson, mainly so he could get some experience. And now what's interesting on this is that, like everything else, the entire The entire episode is just sort of revolving around them as they try to figure out what's going on to the rigs, and the foam starts to invade. Like, this time, after the repeat of that really eerie cliffhanger, which doesn't get a resolution, Maggie Harris is just disappeared. She just goes down into, like, the foam, and she can't be seen, like, at all. It's really creepy. It's really, really creepy. It's just a really creepy scene, and everything just sort of creeps along like that, and I I really, really like. Excuse me. I really like. I really like what's going on, and just sort of the way the story is going. We have our threat, and we have the feeling that everything is sort of going to be ramped up towards some sort of a conclusion, but things are just, giving the impression that things could be going well, they could be going worse. Everything's like the big cliffhanger is that the weed's invading, and it's a lot of talk about that. This is a seaweed creature. We don't really know what it is, but that's not important for like the tension. We know that Oak and Quill, the two comedy characters who had their really creepy scene in episode 2, are sabotaging the rest of the base, and the seaweed is essentially ready to. I don't want to say it's ready to invade. I think it's probably going to try to hurt everybody, and you just sort of you get just this feeling that nothing's going to be going right now. Everything's going to start falling apart and falling apart fast. Like stuff is hitting the fan, and it's hitting the fan hard, and we are getting ready to see how the splatter is coming. Like, you have the Doctor actually put in charge. Every rig out in the North Sea has gone dead quiet, and you don't know what could possibly be happening. It's a very tense episode. You also have a lot of development with Jamie and Victoria, as Jamie has always sort of had these feelings for Victoria, and they have never really been addressed. But now Victoria's now she feels like she wants to leave, mainly because of all the trouble everything's been into. This has been a big part of her a character arc in this story, and it's really well done. Deborah Watling pulls it off. She feels very much like, she's sick of this all. She's sick of traveling because all they seem to do is get into trouble and get into scrapes, and the Doctor, for all his greatness, she wants to settle down. She wants to have her family, which she lost in her first adventure, and she knows she can't get them back, of course. But that's what a lot of this episode is sort of pivoting on, and you just sort of have this feeling of, real fear for Victoria. She wants something more out of life. She wants to see her life, come back together and give herself something to enjoy with her life, which is really, really good. I really enjoy Deborah Watling's performance as Victoria here. She does an excellent job, and the cliffhanger is great, as of course the weed is bursting in and everything is just sort of coming to a head, and everything could potentially be falling apart here and now if it weren't for the fact that that everything is just not there for anything to happen. So I'm going to give Fury from the Deep, episode 4, another 10 out of 10, because it's an excellent episode, and I'll be tomorrow with episode 5. Alright, it is the 22nd of December 2017, and I just finished watching Fury from the Deep, episode 5, as we ramp up to the finale of the story, because we get a big thing with Victoria being kidnapped, of course, which is an interesting plot development, to say the least, but, it's okay that happens, because this time we have something very, very good, very, very good to happen with Victoria, mainly being off stage for most of the episode. We don't have anyone to defeat the weed because, well, by sheer dumb luck, it's of course her screams that defeat it. Now, this is only after, of course, the Doctor mentions the fact that maybe this whole pure oxygen thing That's why they were is what's going to destroy the weed, because they were sabotaging the oxygen stores. These two mystery engineers, who may or may not be standing behind me right at this very moment, as Oak and Quill are standing behind him at that very moment. Of course, this is one of those episodes where just sort of everything just sort of goes wrong for our heroes. Like Victoria gets kidnapped, Robson leaves, Megan Jones, who is a fantastic character. She's this strong woman who won't. She's really just no nonsense, and she's kind of an a-hole most of the time, but she's good at heart, which is always fun to watch. It's a fun character dynamic, as she's the sort of last minute skeptic brought in to be like, what is this weed? This and seaweed and foam is evil. What are you talking about? You're all super dumb, and I'm the intelligent one, because Robson has of course been taken over, so he can't really be the I'm the leader who's no nonsense in this base under siege scenario. Victor Pemberton really has sort of gotten this scenario of the base being under siege with monsters down to a real T here. He's capitalizing on all of the tropes seen in other stories, and this one is, just sort of the best, like sort of the culmination of all of his hard work. He then gets probably some of the. Then you have our good friend Robson there just to be evil, and Robson, he kidnaps Victoria and he threatens her pretty much with death. We get some nice little snippets of footage. Though I want to know why the Australian there's Australian censor cuts, unlike. Australia or New Zealand censor cuts. I can never remember which one. Unlike the 8mm telefootage used in quite a lot of episodes that has happened to be captured, but a lot of them are of important scenes. So I'm like, what? How do you cut this out? It's weird. There's about 3 minutes of footage from this story in total that exist, all from the censors, and it's just sort of the question of how. Like no one really knows. It's one of those weird sort of scenarios where you think, well, they need these scenes, or else how would someone know? I want to know what people in Australia who watched this thought of it when it originally aired, because they probably would be missing on like some pretty important 3 minutes of footage. So that's really interesting. But we have everything ramp up. The oil base is flooding. The Doctor and Jamie go out to save Victoria. They get to be action heroes and try to save the day. Until Jamie hears Victoria screaming, calling for them, and almost falls for hook, line, and sinker. The Doctor pretty much has to pull him out of the foam as they walk into a room, and boom, foam. Robson being all creepy and basically being the creature, which I wouldn't be surprised if this is like the Great Intelligence, because it acts very similarly to the Great Intelligence, but it is. It's just an excellent sort of conclusion to this story, to this episode, as Jamie's just like, I am here to rescue you, Victoria, and gets tricked into realizing Victoria's not there. It's just a good way of ending things. So I'm going to give Fury from the Deep, episode 5, a 10 out of 10. Alright, I quickly would like to apologize for not finishing up this story quicker, but due to the holiday, of course, things got a bit crazy. But it is Christmas 2017, December 25th, that is, for those of you who don't celebrate Christmas. And I just finished watching Fury from the Deep, episode 6, just before, and this will hopefully go out just before I watch the Christmas special. And I have to say, this is the perfect conclusion to what's been a perfect story. We have this. I'm sorry, that was a bit weird. We have the series, the serial that is, working out almost perfectly with just about everything sort of coming to the basically coming to a close with the Doctor and Jamie, Jamie and Victoria, basically having their chance in the spotlight as they as they basically have their have everything there to sort of exist, sort of to have basically to have everything end nicely in a nice little bow before the story's over. You have a lot of the Doctor faffing about, and they basically they save Victoria. If they get into a helicopter, the Doctor decides to fly the thing, which is hilarious because, well, it's the Doctor, so it's not at all how you would expect, a helicopter to be flown. You don't have you have the Doctor even going for a loop to loop in the helicopter, which he even says himself he thought was impossible, and it technically is. You can't really loop to loop in a helicopter. And that being said, you have just sort of this story building us up to this big ending with, mainly with the fact that Victoria is leaving, and that we get the big idea that that the weed can be destroyed by simple screaming, and that when Victoria screams, she is able to get the weed. So we have the weed being killed by a bunch of screams, and the screaming for the weed is, it's a really, it's good. I love the way it happens. Everything is sort of just done in everything just sort of wraps up in a very nice little bow, almost halfway through the episode, and we get some real time for the first time in a while, dedicated to, the Doctor and company, to Victoria deciding that she's going to leave. This is no longer her. She's no longer ready for this. She's giving up the lifestyle, so she goes and lives with the Harrises, and they basically become her family for her, and it is a great. It's a great little. Yeah, it's one of those great little things that, that just sort of, a great little thing that just sort of ends nicely, and we have everything wrapped up in a bow, and, we have 3 minutes of footage that exists. It's just a climax that you really have to see for itself. So I'm going to give Fury from the Deep, Episode 6, a 10 out of 10, because it gives us just that excellent department for Deborah Watling. Everyone's perfect, and that ends the story. That being said, we then take all 6 episodes from Fury from the Deep to average them to give the story of Fury from the Deep a 10 out of 10. Thank you for watching this episode of the Ultimate Doctor Who Marathon. Please leave a like or a dislike if you didn't like this, comment and subscribe, and we'll see you next time on the Ultimate Doctor Who Marathon when we look at the next Patrick Troughton story with The Wheel in Space.